Who are you, Jesus?
Who are you, Jesus?
Who are you, Jesus? Who are you, Jesus?
Who are you, Jesus?
Who are you, Jesus?
Welcome to week number 6 of our series of asking the question, who are you, Jesus? Well done if you've stuck with us for the previous 5 weeks until now. You're in the second last week now, so welcome back. Again, if you're joining us for the first time, it's absolutely great to have you. And you'll be able to watch all the previous episodes in the series by clicking onto our website or finding the St. Columba's YouTube channel, and you can subscribe to that for free, and then you can watch all the other videos. They're short, so it wouldn't take you long to catch up. I'm Derek, I'm one of the ministers at St. Columba's, and along with a friend, Esteban Shed from Chicago, and also a different member of the church family here each week, we've been challenging you. If you're not someone who's given your life to Jesus Christ, if you're not a Christian, we've been challenging you to examine why his claims are the most significant claims anyone in the world has ever made, and invite you to allow him to change you. And if you will believe in him, we are assured that your life will never be the same again and will be infinitely better. Now, near the end of Jesus' life, he told his disciples that he was leaving them. Several times he told them he had come with a specific purpose, that he was going to die and on the third day he was going to be raised again, and that then he would ascend to heaven. Now, they either didn't hear that, they didn't listen, they didn't take it in, or they were confused and frightened by it. And finally, when he said it again, one of them, called Thomas, said to him, Look, you see you're going to be leaving us. You say you're going to be going to heaven. We don't know how to get there. We don't know the way, and we're afraid. And this is how Jesus replied. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And you'll hear that reading shortly as well. Now, when someone says that, they're either a nutcase, a megalomaniac, or they are who they say they are, and he is who he says he is, God the Son. Now, you've got to choose that, but when you do, you've got to have good reason, and remember that one day if his claims are true, and you've ignored or rejected him, you will face him, and you will realise the monumental mistake that you've made in not taking him seriously. So this is a short statement, a short claim that he makes, but he does say in it some very controversial and important things. First place, he says there is such a thing as truth, and it can be known. Indeed, he's saying he is its source. He is truth. He is God. He's the revelation of truth. He's the maker, the standard. He's the prism, the lens, the revealer of what genuine truth is. Now that is, by any standard, a massive claim. Because, we live in days when people say all the time, oh, what is truth? Can you know truth? There is no truth. There's no ultimate truth. Or if there is, it's subjective. Truth is subjective. Whatever you happen to feel is right for you. And yet, where does that whole concept of moral right and wrong come from, if we are just a collection of atoms in a purely physical universe? He's saying that there is certainty and there is truth, and that matters greatly, and it matters because he also says he is love, so that the two fuse together, his truth and his love, and these are very important things. But he's also saying that there is exclusive truth. Ouch, that's not something we want to hear about. In other words, he is claiming that all religions don't lead to God. He's saying that we can just find our own way to heaven by choosing our own path. That's absolutely bonkers, but only if it's false. If I go to visit my son Scott in the US, I can't just go to Edinburgh Airport and jump on any plane. Especially if it's a plane that says it's heading to Milan or to Barcelona. However sincere I might be about thinking that I just need to get on a plane and it will take me to America. No, there's some things that are exclusively right or wrong. And if I want to go to the right destination, I have to heed the notices, and I have to get on the right plane, and I have to obey the various signs that will take me to that plane. And there's nothing more important when we think about destinations than Jesus Christ, God in the flesh, the source of life. He came from heaven and he returned to heaven, and he tells us that he is the only way to get to the Father in heaven. And he's also saying there's a purpose in life. There's a way. There is not only a way, but there's a destination, both life now and life forever. We're made to be in relationship with God, in his company and in the company of others. We're made to be in a place without sin, without evil, crying and death. And that's what he's preparing for those who will put their trust in him. And as we follow him now, we have his healing, his love, his company, his wisdom. And that gives us purpose and identity. And he's also saying it's relational. He doesn't say, I'll show you the way, or I'll reveal the truth to you, or I'll give you the secret ingredients of life. He is saying he is all of these things himself. And it's through him and in a relationship of trust with him that we will experience these things. He is the way, in other words. It's through his work, his life and his death on the cross that he breaks down the dividing wall of my sin that is between me and God, and the death that is the result of that. And he restores life and gives forgiveness, a hope and a future. And it's a gift. We can't earn it. It's not about being good enough, nice enough, religious enough. It's about recognising there's nothing we can do. We can't find the way ourselves. We're just absolutely lost, unable to put things right, either in this world or in our heart. And he has come to be the answer. He has done it. And he's done it because he loves us. So he is the way, the truth and the life. So I hope you'll listen to the Bible reading and then hear from Estevan, our friend from Chicago, who will look at this verse from a slightly different angle. And then listen to Rowan, one of our church family, as she shares what it means for her to be a Christian in the light of the claims of Jesus here.
Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God, and trust also in me. There is more than enough room in my Father's home. If this were not so, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I will come and get you, so that you will always be with me where I am. And you know the way to where I am going.
No, we don't, Lord, Thomas said. We have no idea where you are going, so how can we know the way? Jesus told him,
I am the way, truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. If you had really known me, you would know who my Father is. From now on, you do know him and have seen him.
typically like to think we're not influenced by the messages of other people. But in reality, we are deeply affected by what we take in. You know it. It could be videos on YouTube, or friends' opinion, or a song we play on repeat over and over, lyrics in our head. The question is, are all messages good for us, or are all messages actually true? Specifically, in regards to the topics of God and how to live life, who has the right answers? Let's get Jesus' take on this idea from John chapter 14. Before Jesus called him, Peter was a guy who fished for a living. His life had changed dramatically after that call. Now, after leaving everything, Jesus was talking to him about going back to heaven and leaving the disciples. Anxiety filled his heart. The disciples of Jesus were all young men. Although they grew up in a different time, they were swimming in messages and propaganda just like us today. Which way was right? I can imagine the question like, Jesus, why are you leaving us here alone in this confusing and crazy world? Or, I thought we were supposed to follow you and now you're leaving us? I would have responded just like Thomas, Lord, what are you talking about? I don't know how to get to heaven. Jesus shows real care and guidance for his disciples, though. He knows our hearts can get incredibly confused. He first reassures them, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. Secondly, he gives them hope of his return. When everything is ready, I will come and get you so that you will always be with me where I am. And thirdly, he gives them the God-given instructions based on his divine identity. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the light. No one can come to the Father except through me. Those are divine directions. Jesus answers the deepest questions humankind has had and explored in all of its history. Is there a God? Who is he? How can we know him and live forever? All these questions, right? Like a troubled young man or woman in a dark room, hearing a million different voices and not knowing who to believe or what to follow, Jesus boldly claims that he is the only true way to know and be with God forever. Trust in him. And don't go on living with a confused and troubled heart. Jesus came to not only point us to the way, he says, I am the way. Believe in me, and I got you. For this life, for all eternity. Let's trust him.
Hello, my name is Rowan and I've been a member here at St Columba's for just over 5 years. I started coming when I was a student in Edinburgh and I've just sort of hung around ever since. Currently I'm working as part of the staff team at the church as a ministry apprentice, and yeah, it's really great. I'm really loving it. And I've been a Christian for just over 5 years as well. And something that has really been helpful to me in my journey as a Christian is the fact that Jesus says that he is the way, the truth, and the life. I think this statement from Jesus brings so much meaning to my faith. It brings so much comfort in a world where I think I'm always looking for what is true. I think we're all searching for what is true, and truth is often at the forefront of questioning. I think Jesus' words here bring clarity. I think for me, so much of who I am is based on what I know to be true, and what I believe to be true impacts the way that I live my life. And so I think before I was a Christian, I found it incredibly hard to know what was true about myself and about the world. I found it incredibly hard to know who I was and what to think about the world that we live in when I had nothing to base it off of. It meant that things like my identity, who I was as a person, was based on what made me feel good. And so I guess in many ways that meant that my life was built on my perception of what was true about me. What the qualifier was of was what was true, was what made me feel good. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it meant that my identity was quite volatile. I was always trying to reinvent myself. I've gone through an embarrassing amount of phases. I've had a lot of half hobbies. And I think it was all because I built my identity on what I felt was true. And that was a truth that changed depending on how I felt, what mood I was in, and my foundation of life was rocky. For example, if I had based my identity on what would bring me satisfaction in life, for example, I would chase down anything that I thought would bring me that satisfaction, and that's what I built my life on. And I think this works until you realise that something like getting straight A's doesn't actually change anything about your life. It didn't ever fill the hole that I thought it would, and I started to doubt that that was actually true, and that it would bring the meaning that I thought it would. And so, yeah, I think when these things turned out not to be true, I struggled to believe what to think about myself and what to think about the world, because if this wasn't true, if this wasn't the answer, then what was true? And I think I knew I needed a measure outside of myself to help me to know who I was and what the purpose of the world and everything was. I think it is so important to be able to build my life on something that I know will be true forever, something unchangeable, something that I can always rely will be able to hold up my life. And I think that truth is something that can support the weight of a life. It needs to be something that's true in every culture, every age, every stage of life, and that it'll never change. And I think that's one of the reasons why Jesus says that he is the truth. I mean, this is a guy speaking 2,000 years ago in a completely different culture, a completely different time, a completely different language from me, a 24-year-old girl living in Edinburgh. And yet his words have the power to change my life today. I just think that's incredible, that Jesus' words give me meaning outside of myself, and I don't have to be the judge of what is true. I think that for me, knowing Jesus saves me from the twisting and changing narrative of the world. It gives me a voice to listen to that I know won't change tomorrow, a voice with eternal perspective, and it gives me a judge outside of myself to define truth. And while it's great to have this truth to believe, it can actually be pretty uncomfortable. I think that as opposed to how I would define right and wrong before by what made me feel good, it's changed. Being a Christian can be uncomfortable because listening to the truth of God's word highlights all of the flaws and the brokenness in my own heart. And that's uncomfortable, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. I think I already knew I was broken, and I don't need to look very far into my own heart to find bitterness and envy and pride. But the amazing thing is that Jesus also calls himself the way and the life. And so for me, becoming a Christian, I saw how flawed I was, how far short I fell of perfection, of worthiness to even know God. And yet, Jesus promises me life in believing in him. Even though being a follower shows up these places of brokenness, he doesn't abandon me, but shows me my need for him and my need for forgiveness. Jesus died for all of my wrongdoings, all of my mess-ups and all of my brokenness. And in that death gives me a way that I can know God. Following Jesus is the way that leads to life. And it's amazing because this is someone who sees my heart and knows all of the bits that I try to hide and yet still dies for me. I just think that's the best news in the world. And so Jesus gives me life. He gives me the assurance that when I die, I'll be with God. But also he gives me new life now. Jesus says he's the way, and that helps me to see living well in the light of what I know to be true about Jesus is the best way that I could be living. I think that knowing God lets me live freely, not constrained by trying to work out what's true, who I am, what my purpose is. Actually, knowing Jesus gives me a foundation of this is God, this is the world, this is you, and it lets me live in response to that. I think it was so easy before to feel trapped by a search for the truth of who I am in the world because everything felt so subjective, and I just felt like I was captive to every opinion and trend and just battered around because I didn't know what to think. But earlier on in the same book, John's Gospel, Jesus says that the truth will set you free. And I think that's so amazing. I think for me, knowing the truth is truly what sets me free. No matter what circumstance I'm in life, Jesus is the truth. He's the lens through which I can understand myself and the world. And that never changes, not even in a pandemic, because it made me question if it's true. Jesus still shows me the way to life in him, and that's just such incredible news. Thank you.
So thanks for joining us on this second last week. We don't know who is all watching these videos, but we are praying for you that God will speak to you through his word, through the Bible, and through what we've been trying to help to explain and introduce you to our Saviour and our friend Jesus Christ. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to have you sign up for the follow-up course. And remember, if you do so, we will send you more details and also a copy of John's Gospel to read for that course. So make a date to come and join us for the last week, 5:30 p.m. next Sunday evening, where we'll look at Jesus' claim to be the true vine and what does that mean. Again, if you want to speak to someone about what you've heard, please get in touch this evening, and myself or one of the ministry team will be very happy to speak with you or pray with you. So I hope you enjoyed this evening. See you next week.